Hi, my name is SK, and this is Thought Infrastructure, brought to you by Avenue, Going Beyond, a platform that does both cab hailing and delivery services. Today on Thought Infrastructure, I want to speak about the convergence of market participants. So convergence of market participants. I think this is something that, without a doubt, I just had to address and speak about for us to be able to look at it, think about it, and realize that for me to be able to speak about that, allow me to first bring the element of an economy. The economy is an important structure, and the economy has a way it works. And sometimes we miss that. And unless we appreciate how it works, then most of the time we will keep complaining about it. But yet we can do something about it. For us to do that, therefore, allow me to first say that economics itself is human behavior and how it affects demand and supply. If human behavior can affect demand, if human behavior can affect supply, then we have to be cautious as we look at this particular attribute of humans that is so important to a point that a GDP would depend on human behavior. Therefore, having said that, then we realize that the question becomes, can human behavior be manipulated? If it can, then we have a problem because demand and supply will be manipulated as well. So human behavior can be manipulated purely based on emotions, and the emotions are greed and fear. So whenever you inject greed or fear into the human mind, they become irrational. What's the cure? The cure to irrational thinking by humans is discipline. So we have to realize that the discipline has to be applied to the participants in an economy. Now that we realize how important discipline is, discipline helps an economy have consistent, predictable results. Discipline helps participants as well predict the reaction of people, because people are ideally great products in a market, but if you can't predict the reaction of a person, then you have a challenge, because when you expect them to be polite, they will be harsh. When you expect them to be considerate, they will be vice versa. So it's important for us to know, because they say it's important for you to know the person who's in front of you, either as a partner, as a foe, as whatever it is they are. So for that, discipline becomes the litmus test of how people interact. If someone is of a particular discipline, let's say they are from a discipline that doesn't shake hands, assume, then we have to respect that and operate knowing that if we try to shake their hands, we will offend them. So discipline is important. Allow me to bring, therefore, participants in the economy, so that now we take this element of discipline and place it on the different participants. The thing is, in an economy, people sometimes assume, or most times, assume that we operate in silos, but unfortunately we don't. So these are the three participants in an economy. Number one, there's an individual. Number two, there's a business. And number three, there's a government. Unless individuals, businesses, and governments shake hands, an economy falls, without a doubt, anywhere in the world. So we have to realize that there must be a convergence of these particular participants. But the two first participants, which are individuals and businesses, are judged in an economy by their discipline. When an individual is out of discipline or is prone to jump off their committed discipline, then we call them a liability, and no one wants to touch them because they are unpredictable, and unpredictability is a risk. That's important. So it's important for an individual, therefore, if they are to participate in an economy, to be having an element of consistency of character. Consistency of character is what people would say, I'm a professional. A professional basically means I am disciplined in this particular specialized service. That's important. So for an individual, we look at it from this point of view. We say mind, body, and soul. Mind is the ability of being, is the ability to be someone who's sound, someone who's rational, someone who is able to think, create, and therefore your prospects are your ability to be fruitful. And therefore, every time you exhibit your fruitfulness or the ability to be fruitful, therefore. So, with that said, we realize that that's the mind. Then we go to the body. Body represents appetites. Appetites are blind spots. There are many appetites a human being would have. Greed is an appetite. There are many things that can be appetites. And these appetites would be the blind spots that a person would have. Some people have appetite for praises. Some people have an appetite to look at a certain way. Some people have an appetite of many different ways that we can explain appetites. But at the end of the day, the question is, can you tame your appetite sufficient for us to depend on your prowess when we need you to come through? That's important for an individual. Mind, body, soul is about your core values, your truths, the things that you know that you would never do, or the things that you know unless they are placed on the table, then there's no deal. It's a deal breaker. What's your deal breaker and what's your deal maker? That's the soul of a human. Participant number 2 is a business. And now that we've spoken about the first one, the second one, we have to realize that the litmus as well for business is discipline. But discipline in business is brought in from a different perspective. Number one, we have to look at predictability is the proof of discipline, that someone will be consistent. Therefore, on business, the consistency as well falls same exact way, where you look at the discipline of a business from its policies, from its value system, from its vision. So you're able to look at a business and be able to say that purely based on their policies, I anticipate that they will be consistent to what it is that they have committed to do. And every time that consistency is broken, then trust as well is broken. And that becomes an issue as a business. When people know that your product tastes a certain way, they expect it to taste a certain way without fail. And that's the integrity of the product that you introduced to them. If people come to your barber shop and you massage them after shave, they expect that the next time they come, they get the same exact thing to align to the consistency of a discipline that you introduced as your core value. So therefore, a business brings few things that confirm their discipline. And some of these things are like the governance structure, the structure of the business itself, and on and on and on. The intention is to build a structure that would prevent the owners or the participants in the business to make an emotional decision purely because they lack personal discipline. So corporate discipline comes to join with personal discipline to form something that can be trusted, something that can be consistent. Nonetheless, number 3, the third participant is the government. The government is an important participant. The government's litmus paper is completely different from the individual and the business. The individual and the business fall on the microeconomics, but the government now falls on macroeconomics. As a government, the litmus paper of a government is infrastructure. Infrastructure is important to a government. The way governments make decisions and the reason governments make decisions is to be able to formulate infrastructure and put it into place. The reason policies are made, they are purely to build infrastructure. So the government will protect its infrastructure at all costs. If you threaten government infrastructure, you become the enemy of the state. If you strengthen government infrastructure, you become a darling of the state. So I want now to bring us to the point of realizing that therefore, all decisions that a government will make will be to protect its infrastructure. What protects infrastructure are inflows that come into the government. It's important for us to realize they come so that they protect that infrastructure. When people are voting, they're voting people out because they never built infrastructure or they never maintained infrastructure, and they vote people in so that they put up infrastructure. So if there's one word that we ought to remember at all times when we speak of a nation, it's infrastructure. Outside infrastructure, your conversation to a nation is irrelevant. If you want to partner with a government, think of their infrastructure. Anything outside it is good stories that they don't have time for. And therefore, the government will collect taxes as inflows purely for the sake of infrastructure. Now that we see that on one end, 2 participants are judged by their discipline, and on the other end, the final participant is judged by its infrastructure, then we have to say that unless there's a convergence of these 3 participants in any economy, that economy without a doubt will crash, will fall, will struggle, will not grow. In today's topic, therefore, the convergence of economic participants brings us to a place where we realize that at such a time when we are in a COVID crisis or any other crisis that we may ever be in, we have to realize that this crisis cannot be sorted by one participant. This crisis has always to be sorted from a place of convergence, where an individual rises from a place of discipline, businesses rises from a place of discipline, and a government rises from a place of infrastructure. Infrastructure is the hedge against crisis, but those hedges cannot be built unless there is participation from private sector and participation from individuals. If you speak of corruption, you speak of corruption across those 3 participants. If you speak of progress, you speak progresses across 3 participants. There comes a time, without a doubt, when government infrastructure shakes and struggles. And that particular time, the government will need private partnership to be able to strengthen this infrastructure. And the question is, are we building infrastructure? Or are we thinking of building or strengthening infrastructure? How can we build government infrastructure unless we first start by building personal mental infrastructure? Your first infrastructure is your mind. We have to be able to strengthen our minds to a place where we can create. We have to be able to expound the scope of our thinking to a place where we can be able to partner in a bigger game. We have to come to a place where we realize the game is beyond an individual, and therefore we create corporate entities that will be able to take up different prowess from different people, different skills and talents, and bring them in a corporate discipline where they work as an army with one voice, with one purpose. Then we would be able as well to now shake hands with the government. The government's job, therefore, in this case, wherever it is in the world that you may be looking at, is to be able to create an enabling environment. And an enabling environment is built on infrastructure. Infrastructure is built by the basis on the premise of businesses. Businesses are built by people, and therefore individuals will either be people of morality, of moral standing, or people of immoral standing. So before we blame the world, before we blame the nations, before we blame the governments, before we blame the businesses, we need to start first by looking at our personal infrastructure. And our personal infrastructure will expand the scope of our mind sufficiently to start building value solutions that would not only be sufficient for us as individuals to eat, but for society and economy to be able to grow. But how will it grow unless we partner, without a doubt, with the governments of the day, because a nation has to converge to progress. I bring us to a place of realizing that unless we all take personal responsibility, personal challenge in the effort to build formidable infrastructure that will be generational, then without a doubt, we are going in circles. A day is coming when our energy will deplete. A day is coming, without a doubt, when our ability to create will be challenged by age, by time, by health, by circumstance. But the question is, what are we doing in building infrastructure that can outlast us so that we may leave an inheritance for our children's children's children? This crisis will pass. We have to recognize that. But that aside, what are we building for a generation beyond us? For that, therefore, I want to encourage us to be able to progressively learn and grow, to be able to participate in Convergence. We run a class by the name Class of Investors by Gold Finance Academy, and coming soon to you will be online courses that will go in depth to tell you about the investment universe and its ecosystem, where we will depict more of the things that I just spoke about. So look out for this class coming soon. Thank you very much. My name is SK.